right, Dante, it's a new year. Here we are, another episode of the PodStation. First one of the new year.
And
Welcome.
funny enough, it's episode 13 as well. How ironic is that?
2013. 13 is like a lucky number in a lot of countries, believe it or not.
It's my lucky number. I was born on the 13th, and it was a Friday as well, so...
Wow. Were you like, did like black cats walk in front of you and everything like that?
Nah. I find it more luckier than anything.
I always wondered about that. There's like so many cultures that have, that's their unlucky number. Then there's all these cultures that have it as their lucky number. So like, what does that entail? I don't know.
Bizarre.
In the U.S., I think number 7 is considered lucky, but we'll see. We'll see. The year's young. Who knows? Anyway, welcome back. I trust everyone had a great new year and made it through the holidays to join us. Today we're going to be talking about what's coming in 2013. We're going to talk about Dante's PSN pick of the week. We're going to talk a little bit about Sony. A lot of bit about Sony, actually. Sony's really confusing lately, the way they've been acting. A lot of weird things with their advertising, their direction. PS Vita sales. THQ also has the bankruptcy. We'll talk about what that means. And some other things about Sony's direction, because they're just acting very peculiar. And what's the standout here? What's the big thing to talk about? Do you think it's Sony's advertising?
I think probably that'll be the biggest thing that we talk about this week.
Okay.
I think Sony's direction in 2013 is something maybe to focus on a little bit next week. But we'll say a bit more about that at the end of the show.
Yeah, well, we'll hit up PS4 Orbis next show, and see what becomes of that. But definitely, I don't know. We have to figure out what to expect from Sony. Anyway, this coming year, I'll start off by saying the sites, we're still kind of in that move phase. I know it's been a long time coming. I apologize to everyone. We lost a programmer in there. Things have been a little weird with that. We've got what everything looks to be working very well at the new site location, and we're ready to do the final move. Just kind of a little bit, ironing out the small bugs here and there. Anytime you do something like this, it's a big deal when you're repointing where everything's looking, and there's a million things looking in the old spots, or you don't know if they're looking in the old spot when they're supposed to be looking in the new spot. So there's some challenges, and certainly that's kind of put some new ideas on hold, because Dante, we've got a lot of new ideas for the year. I can tell you, we are adding a chat program. We're going to do that. We're going to be building out trophy profiles, and we're going to be implementing a bunch of things that are imported from Sony directly with your trophy profile, specifically with images and whatnot from all the things that you see on the trophy card sites will be implemented in some way or shape, form, fashion. The whole idea is to get it as built out as possible in a social context. And then, of course,
the news.
And of course, the news. Complete revamp of the front pages. And that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work with you, the news guys, and with the site members to see what they'd like to see. And then, a lot of the other things are going to be getting little bumps. Obviously, we want to continue with all the stuff that we have, and we want to get that card site stuff going, get a whole bunch of additions there, get a whole influx of members, and a bunch of things to do with being a member, subscription services. And when we do all that stuff, then you're basically talking about we'll grow at a really huge rate. We should attract a lot of people's attention with our cards all around the internet. And if we can do that, we'll be very, very successful. We'll have a lot of members. We'll have a lot of stuff to pump into there. We'll have funds. We'll have things to expand upon. Areas where we get very little attention right now because we just don't have the members, i.e. things like clans, would get a ton of attention. And that's the goal. We really want We really want to build it out. Obviously, I'm one of those people. I do things, a little bit backwards. I have this build it and they will come mentality.
Yeah.
Some people don't appreciate that, but I just feel it's got to be done before we do any advertising. I've got money already set aside for advertising. I've got, ways to optimize the site for getting members in, and still haven't done that. I want people to come there and see all the finished stuff. Of course, we've got our Staple Point members that know that what we're about, know all the things that we have already, and they appreciate that and they stick around. But I think we also get a lot of visitors that are like, well, this is kind of, still doesn't have a lot of the stuff that we want to see.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, I think 2013 is just going to be a huge year for the site. I mean, we are still talking about, the first week into the year, do you know what I mean? And the plans are already in place to implement a lot of stuff, and we've got 12 months to really get all that put down. But
the thing that's important to realize is we're still a very young site. There's these other sites out there that have been open for years. People like to mention them, and they have this and they have that. And the reality is those sites have been built out over the course of years to get where they are, and we're already, the one example that we're compared to all the time, we're about 90%. And then we have a lot of things that they don't have. It's one of those things that. What's that?
Like a podcast.
Like a podcast, and the whole key is to get it. All the things that we want to do, as members and as a site, those are really our focus. It's a lot of things because our members, we want a lot of things, but they're all doable. They're all obtainable, and I look forward to, as we move forward, there's always something that we can do to improve. Always. There's no final staple point. Even when we're all set and we're considered quote unquote done and ready for the masses, it'll still be time to refresh and redo and to implement new ideas. They won't be as on a grander scale, but you always got to be improving. You always got to be moving forward. Growth is where it's at. There's an old saying about if you're not growing, then you're dying. And really, we want to keep achieving more and more all the time. And all I ask is that we have a little bit of patience. It's a little bit slow right now with the server move, but once we get that, it'll be kicked into high gear. I promise you that. There's a lot waiting on the back burner for this server move, and just unfortunately, it's not my area of expertise, and it's something that we're having a little bit of tricky difficulty with, having multiple databases and having some complicated things with what's known as a Plesk desk, so we can host multiple sites in one location, some things like that, and we'll get there. We will get there.
But
so
nevertheless, exciting times.
Yes.
New Year, it's time to get excited about the site again.
Yes, indeed. And really, a lot of this is it's also what we make of it, because one of the things I can say is that the members are a great source of ideas. They're a great source of inspiration for a lot of things. I'm continually surprised by, somebody mentions an idea, they send me a PM, something like that, and it's absolutely fantastic and it's original, and you're just like, well, yeah, that makes complete sense. And there's so many things, even things that we haven't even thought of, that, a fresh idea comes around, regularly, and you're just like, yeah, there's no reason we can't do that. So it's, I find it's one of those areas that, growth and everything like that is going to come from everybody just keeping a level head about what's possible. And, if you can dream about it being something on the site, it's affordable, it's doable, it's within our programming power, let's do it.
So keep spamming your inbox with tons of ideas then.
Yeah, and run it by members, put it in those idea threads and say, hey, I got an idea for this. If it's crazy, we get those too. But it'll be vetted out. and chances are you might even spawn another idea. Even if it's kind of crazy, you say, hey, I thought about this, and you put that out there, that might spawn another idea about something else. Trophy cards are the perfect example. You'd think we have every kind of combo locked down and everything like that, and then all of a sudden someone says, hey, what about a card like this? And you're like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, there's a lot of things like that we can do, as a group of gamers to improve everyone's situation. And then even right down to, the Mafia games and things like that people bring from other places. These are great ideas. Obviously we need someone to run them and to explain them out fully so others understand. And they can be fun. We can implement them. We can go forward with them. They're a good thing. So
that's just made me think of a fantastic suggestion, but I'll PM that
there you go.
at some point.
There you go. So, but anyway, you tell us, is there something in particular you're looking forward to on the site 2013?
Well, obviously given my role within the site, it's just the news for me. I mean, as many people are obviously aware that I did an article over the New Year's holidays. It took me 3 days to do it, I might add, just covering everything that was coming out in 2013, and that got a lot of great reaction to it. And I think from the news team's perspective, the fact that we're able to cover all those games over the course of the year, but also have a direct input into how we're going to be able to change some of the way that we do news on the site over the course of the year, it just got me excited. I wasn't bothered that it took me 3 days to write a news article, because it gave me renewed motivation and focus to know that, I've put this article out, but there's still more work to be done. And it kind of got me excited again that, the news is going to be a big thing for us in 2013. So, I don't know, that's really what I'm sort of looking forward to, just being able to grow that even more.
Yeah. And we're going to have to make sure that we put those stories front and center. And what I mean by that is a big part of the Google searches and things like that. We need to make sure that we put that right out there as a good form of almost the advertising and things like that, where your structure for that is first and foremost when people do a search that it hits upon those things. We're going to have to optimize everything for that. A lot of people, I think they search news and they search for main topics and things that they're interested in. And so we'll have to do a real good job of that. And my intention is to make our front pages just geared towards the news 100%. What's recent with guides, what's recent with news, what's the hot topics, what people are talking about, and then have on those front pages a way to post comments and things like that directly. And, almost like a built-in archive, news archive.
I think the other thing, sort of speaking news team, is that now that we've actually rebuilt the news team again, I'm looking forward to working with the guys over 2013, Buku and IDP, coming in, and they're starting to slowly find their feet again. And I think being able, from my perspective, being, stepping up to the news team lead, is nurturing that talent as part of our growth as well. I think, getting them to the point where, people are really responding to what they're writing, and it's not just all about myself, is something that I'm looking forward to in 2013 as well, with the site as well. I think, if you're going to have news as an important thing, you also need to have great characters behind that news. Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to build that with the new team as well. So, yeah, it's exciting times for us, and that's really what I'm looking forward to more than anything.
Right, indeed. And then, generating some things that pique people to respond, and those are key. And I think that that'll be another factor that we'll work in is kind of like top comments and things like that, kind of putting them in there, maybe with like a thumbs up system. And if we can involve people from the outside in the news and they got to come and they got to stop and make a comment, then that's going to hook people. More likely than not, if you come and you care enough that, well, that story's pretty good, and well, I want to comment on that, and then it's like, well, maybe I'll stick around and see what's responded to in terms of my comment, and then you've got them, and you've got people to know that that's a place where we can come and discuss things in the news, because a big part of a forum is discussion, having topics to discuss. It's not just a quick note to people, or you stop in and see a guide and you leave. Those are the transient people that are out there. There's a lot of those, but you got to get something that they have a two-way conversation going with someone it's an item of importance to become involved. And I know that's, for me, even personally, that was what hooked me to going on to forums. Is initially I was just a visitor. I took what I wanted. I visited images and guides and videos and things like that, and I didn't stop in. And then every once in a while something would pique my interest enough where it's like, I gotta comment on that, or I gotta thank that person.
I still do that, but to be honest with you, I think that's part of the reason why I'm still here. I've stuck around. I've got involved because I do think the site's the place where, out of all of them that are out there, it's got the most potential to be that one thing that gets those transient people to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think 2013 is going to be just a huge year to build on that and actually start capturing that audience.
Yeah. Well, don't be shy with the ideas. Don't be shy with the ideas. Make sure you send me that idea. It's probably something grand.
I was going to say, if you cleared out your inbox ready for 2013.
I do have a pretty full inbox.
Yeah. You might need to do some spring cleaning on that.
I might.
Straight away.
Okay. So, name us off a PSN pick of the week.
Yeah, well, it's been relatively quiet, obviously, with the Christmas holidays. Colour me surprised when Sony Europe actually did the PlayStation Plus update on the 2nd of January.
Wow.
So if you don't already know what you're in for with PSN Plus, in Europe you can get BioShock 2, Guardians of Middle-earth and Mortal Kombat for free as part of your Plus subscription, and you can go and grab those off on the store now. I think the US had some updates over Christmas as well. There wasn't any particular relatively new releases to really speak of, with the exception of one which has earned our PSN pick of the week. But to be honest, it's a worthwhile title anyway, not just because it was the only one released, but because it's actually a hell of a lot of fun. It's a free game, which is always good, and it's called Jetpack Joyride. Now, this has been available on Android mobile phones for God knows how long, and it's had a great reception. It's a side-scrolling shooter game, which is available on both the PS3 and PS Vita, and you play as this character called Barry, which seems bizarrely ordinary for a video game, but essentially what you do is you have to fly your jetpack through the level and try and get as far as you possibly can, and you just jump over obstacles and avoid missiles and all kinds of things. But it's got that kind of repetitive, addictive play to it. And as you go through the course of the game, you actually have to do things like collect coins, and there's like mini missions, and you can post high scores and distances to Facebook on both versions of the game. With the PS Vita, it's even more interesting because you actually have to use the rear touch panel to make Barry jump, which, to be honest with you, is kind of bizarre that there aren't more games out there that utilise the rear touchpad. But this one does a great job of it, and you'll easily sink tens of hours into this free game. So on those grounds, it merits making everybody aware of it as a PSN pick of the week. It really is fun, and at the end of the day, with it being free of charge, there's a thing where sometimes if you get something free, there's always that question of whether it's going to be any good or not.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, this is really good. So it warrants the investment of time into it. So yeah, Jetpack Joyride. It's on the PSN store now. You can pick it up, and you can pick up both versions for your Vita and PS3. So I'd recommend that you go and check that out
Okay.
if you
Interesting.
haven't already. Because I have seen a lot of people playing it as well.
Well, I don't know. They need to name the character. You know, he has to have a video character name.
Yeah, I know. I was kind
Jason
of
Storm.
I was kind of surprised that they stuck with an ordinary name like Barry, but I think it adds a little bit to the humour of it. There is some humorous moments within the game itself, so
Barry.
um, yeah, it just makes it all that little bit more funnier. But yeah, definitely check it out. Um, I might actually get some videos up on YouTube in the next week or so, just to show people what it's like. So and show it running on the PS Vita. So yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I had a weird Christmas. I was very sick, but you know, I've got a lot of money on the PlayStation Store to spend yet that I haven't decided. I played a lot of demos, and I found things that I was kind of interested in, like The Walking Dead, and
Yeah.
you know, my kids talked me out of that one, actually, believe it or
Why?
not.
How did they do that?
I don't know. They said, well, I don't know, Dad. You're just clicking on stuff. It kind of doesn't look very fun, and blah, blah, blah. You know, I was like,
Yeah, but
I'm
with the
still up in the air. I got like my PSN card money and all that other stuff, and I'm like, you know, that's like all I really got for Christmas. And I'm kind of like, you know, I don't know what to spend it on yet. I'm still
I have to admit,
up in the air.
I spent a fortune on it on PSN store just because there was some great bargains on the festive sales. I mean, we made a lot of great recommendations over the Christmas period during the podcasts. We obviously made gift suggestions that people should take advantage of. But you know, there was some great bargains of games gone by. I mean, Family Guy, for example. Yeah, it may have been critically panned, but it was a lot of fun, and I was able to pick it up for less than half the price of what you'd find it for retail. So, and you know that's just one example. There were some other things like some JRPGs and what else did I pick up? I picked up Under the Feet HD. That was going for under a tenner. So that was worthwhile picking up. And Rune Factory as well, which I've yet to sink some time into.
Hmm. Well, Squill told me I should get the Black Ops 2 Season Pass since I love that game so much.
Yeah, I had noticed you had been playing that a lot over Christmas.
I was playing Modern Warfare 3, and you know it. Everyone
Well,
keeps
yeah.
asking me, why aren't you playing Black Ops 2? Because I hate it.
I had noticed you sent me an
I've
invite for
experienced
that.
more glitches in these things, and I don't know what it is lately. Even Modern Warfare 3 is glitching up on me. I don't know if it's my PlayStation or my connection or what. I was playing
Dang.
last night, and every game I was playing Drop Zone. For those of you that don't know, it has smoke, and it has red smoke on the drop zone. The entire game had smoke. Everywhere I went, the entire game had smoke. Like I'm not on the drop zone, and there's just, I mean, it wasn't red smoke, but it was gray smoke everywhere I went.
Yeah, it sounds
Uh,
about right for a Call of Duty game, to be
I'm
honest.
like, what? How does that happen to me? And I reset it, and it's the same thing the next game, and like it was just like, oh my gosh,
I
how can
need
I
to
be
set
running
your
around?
targets higher.
It makes it hard to see anybody and kill anything.
So you could have been playing the
Everyone's
fantastic Far Cry 3 instead.
and I've heard that too. I've had people send me a bunch of messages across PSN that, you know, to try it. It's a great game, and I may
Oh,
just have to do that. I think 2013 is going to find me looking for a new FPS, and I think that I'm going to have to stray away from Call of Duty,
yeah.
whether
I
it's
think that was
Battlefield or Far Cry or something. I'll have to try something else.
well, you may have your wish because one of the games that I forgot to put in that 2013 article was a new IP from Guerrilla Games, and it's not a Killzone title either.
What is it going to be?
who knows? That's the mystery behind it. All we know is that they are working on a new IP. They have been for the last 2 years. So we may even see that, and it may get a release this year.
Hmm.
So if you are looking for a new FPS, definitely watch out for that, and obviously Destiny as well from Bungie.
Yeah, I might have to try some of these Medal of Honors, the Battlefields. I just might have to do it. Or
Yeah.
even, you know, what's the other one with the camo and everything like that? You mentioned just recently. But anyway, I hear a lot of great things. I hear Far Cry, exceptional.
I've got to be honest. I've just remembered the game that I think you may be talking about there, and that might be Crysis. If I'm honest,
Ghost
I'd stay
Recon.
well away from that.
No, it was Ghost Recon. Squill just hit me with that. Yeah, Ghost Recon, definitely. A lot of these, they may not be the big hit titles that sell, millions and millions of copies, but there's probably something to be said about the online being probably a lot more stable and everything like that. I guess we'll have to see. I'll have to experiment, try, see if I can find some demos in some of these.
Well, I can make a recommendation for you straight away on that, and it may involve sort of adding to your vast backlog, but Operation Flashpoint Red River was a really good first-person shooter, even though it had numerous flaws, but I would certainly recommend tracking that down and getting hold of a copy of that if you're looking for a different kind of FPS. So yeah,
Interesting.
Pick that one up.
Okay.
So we should probably go ahead and start discussing some of these topics we mentioned at the beginning of the show. I don't really know where to start. I think we probably should start with the THQ thing because, to be honest with you, the other stuff's probably going to run into each other.
Okay.
So I take it you heard about what is happening with THQ.
Chapter 11.
Yeah.
So there's
bankruptcy, basically.
Screwing over all their shareholders, and yeah, for those that aren't aware, THQ is, let's see, they were big with, they had the Metro stuff that was coming out, Saints Row.
Here's the thing, and this is why it's extremely interesting, because THQ have a lot riding on 2013, as you mentioned, with titles like Metro Last Light. There's obviously the upcoming South Park RPG, and a few other titles from them, including Saints Row 4, I think.
Company of Heroes.
Company of Heroes is going to continue to expand in 2013 as well. So it's interesting when you sort of look at THQ and then realise with such a potential great 2013 from that, just before the end of the year they end up going into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It seems a weird time to do it as well, just before Christmas. It's not ideal. But here's the thing. They announced that they were going into Chapter 11, but they've since been bought out by a holding company for around about $60 million. And it was revealed that they were something like $100 million in the wrong side.
Yeah.
Which makes me curious that even with the failure of UDraw, how they managed to sort of rack up that debt, to be honest.
Well, I know they sold EA UFC rights, UFC games, and it's one of those things, like, people, like, if you're not aware, some of these companies come from, they start as other things and they work into gaming, and they sell off rights, and they do deals with other companies. So a lot of that can happen in the background where you're not sure, like they might sell the rights to something and have an influx of money. Or they might start working with another company, but that company might be the main owner of the rights, and they might do a lot of the work and get a smaller portion of the funds. A lot of weird things happen when you have large companies working with other companies, or they're bankrolled on a certain project. So there's no telling how they came to be that much in the hole, but obviously everything can be in danger when something like that happens. If they sell off,
in the bankruptcy or they don't do something right, you know, boom, next thing you
But
know, some other company gets the rights to a game and they might shut it down altogether, totally change the direction. You know, who knows?
but I'm confused because they must be pouring a hell of a lot of money into investments because the titles that they've had of late, Saints Row 3 sold, 3 or 4 million units. Homefront wasn't particularly successful, but it still sold 2 to 3 million copies. And the revenue that generates, we're not talking about small amounts of numbers. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, it can't cost them hundreds of $1 million to make those two games alone. Yet they're bringing in revenue. So what the hell is THQ investing in? Because this is the other interesting thing from all this bankruptcy fallout is that THQ have several interesting projects that hadn't been announced, still in the works, and had been for a number of years.
Well, maybe they're working
Uh,
on too many different directions and pouring all their money into these new directions. You know, it's like the U-Draw. I mean, there's no telling how that came to be and how expensive that could have been to develop. Um,
well, I'll be honest with you,
whose
having one, I
responsibility was it?
mean, we made it as a gift recommendation over the Christmas holidays, but having one, I can't imagine that it costs them too much to actually get manufactured, because essentially we're talking about taking the innards of a PS3 pad or Xbox pad, Wii pad, whichever version you've got, and just putting that into another bit of plastic with a responsive solid tablet. And it can't be as expensive, say, produce as it can't be as expensive as producing, say, a touchscreen,
Mm-hmm.
um, touchscreen glass. So I can't imagine it costs THQ to produce a lot of them. And even if they had stock, I mean, they produced a lot of stock. I mean, they should have been easily able to sell 1 to 2 million versions of it. So I don't know. It begs the question, from the people behind THQ, where is their direction? What is it they want to achieve? Because that's something I haven't seen from THQ for a number of years. I mean, you look at companies like Ubisoft, and Ubisoft are gunning to replace EA and Activision at the top of the table. But when you look at THQ, you can't understand what they're doing. They constantly pump out sequels. That for the longest time they had this fascination with producing, most of the industry's kid-friendly games.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard anyone from THQ ever aspire to be anything more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're sort of lacking real leadership there and a real vision. What do THQ want to be? Do they want to be a mediocre brand just pumping out the odd sequel here and there? Or do they really want to invest in indie titles? Do they want to be climbing the ladder? Do they want to be the number one publisher? Because, looking from the outside in, I can't see anyone from THQ that's actually saying that or aspiring to be. Even when they recruited, what's his name, from Naughty Dog, they still weren't saying things like that. And I don't know. I think as a publisher and a developer, one of the things that you do, you aspire to be different from everybody else, but you also aspire to be the best of the best, if you know what I mean. And THQ just have lacked that vision for so long that, to be honest with you, the bankruptcy didn't surprise me at all when it came about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, U-Draw didn't do so hot. Homefront didn't do so hot.
Mm.
You know, I don't know. You know,
It'll
I
be
think their
interesting.
problem started a couple years ago, and
Yeah,
they probably shouldn't have sold off like the UFC franchise and some other stuff. They probably should have
yeah,
stuck to the things that they were good at making them successful to give them money for these other projects instead of trying
yeah.
in so many different areas. But it's neither
See,
here nor there if we don't know the inner workings. We don't know, you know, exactly what choices they made. So it's hard sometimes from the outside to figure out because you never know. I mean, things like that, you know, it could amount to the other thing that people in the U.S. are very keen to now is like what are executives being paid compared to what's being reinvested into the company.
mm,
You know, I mean, when you look at things like that on a larger scale, you know, these there's so many things that can affect a company's success or failure that it's often very hard to figure out what exactly was there one mistake or was there many. or was it a series of things that just went wrong
I'd be
in the
inclined
industry?
to agree with you in some respects if we were talking about any other industry, but with the games industry, you live and die by the quality of the product.
Hmm.
And let's be honest, THQ's quality of products have not been very good for a number of years.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my point is this: is that like, I mean, THQ, for those that don't know, like I researched it, they started as a toy company, and actually THQ stands for Toy Headquarters originally. But what happens with these companies is they find these joint ventures. And anytime you're doing a joint venture, it's like most people don't realize this. Like you have a game that's developed by a company, and then it can be turned over to another company for things for licensing and things like that, and actually published. So you can have a developer and a publisher, and they can be two different entities, two different companies that have an agreement. And what that amounts to is there's going to be a split there. There's going to be a split in terms of profit sharing, in terms of how much the person that came up with the idea gets a certain percentage, and another one that's just cranking out maybe discs and advertising and things like that is going to get another portion of it. How does that work out? Is it a bigger deal when you turn a game over to a bigger publisher because they're going to get the word out more for you? You take a game like Homefront, which supposedly was a pretty good game. It doesn't have the exposure that maybe something like Call of Duty gets in terms of advertising and having commercials on primetime television in the United States. How do you equate that to a publisher? If you're turning something over to Activision to actually publish and advertise versus, you're a little game company that doesn't have those kind of resources, doesn't have that kind of access. How much does that affect the bottom line?
Yeah, but still, at the end of the day, you can supersede all those if the quality of your product's enough to shine through. We've seen it with
Yeah, but how do you
numerous developers
explain
and
how do you explain
publishers.
Call of Duty? I mean, let's be honest here. It's usually a polished turd when it's released. I mean, the honest about it is it has glitches. It has severe glitches that are very right in your face. That like, hey, this doesn't even work, or hey, this is severely unbalanced to the point where there's always, every time one comes out, everyone expects that there's always something like that they're going to need to fix. To the point where people say, well, you don't play it the first couple weeks because it's going to be like that. Or there's so many people on the first couple weeks that hey, they've
But
been making
here's
those same games for years. They've had
but
the
here,
online for years. They haven't got it
here
figured out yet.
yeah, but here's the thing. Call of Duty 4 was a quality product, and they've
Yes.
built that brand on that quality product. THQ haven't got a quality product to build a brand on.
Yes, but let's say they had an agreement with Activision now, and then Activision was going to take Homefront, for example, and put that at the top of their priority list because they're getting a bigger portion of that now. So then it's advertised alongside Call of Duty, and it gets the exposure that Call of Duty does.
Hmm.
Are they so different in gameplay, or is it really a Homefront doesn't get the attention that a Call of Duty gets because of the name? Call of Duty Homefront, and then all of a sudden, boom,
Yeah.
the sales are 3 times as much.
Well, you know, just to push the conversation on a little bit, that might all change for them because even though THQ have been purchased, I know certainly watching the news feeds over Christmas and stuff, there were a lot of rumours doing the rounds that Ubisoft
Mm-hmm.
were actually looking to potentially acquire a lot of THQ's IPs.
Yep.
So obviously there's some potential there with it all. And this is what I'm saying, it's not that THQ do terrible games. Some of the ideas that come out of those titles are quite interesting. I mean, the idea behind Homefront was interesting. It's poor execution and poor development skills and marketing is what really made it sort of not very good, to be honest. And I think if someone like Ubisoft got behind a title like that, I think it's not just then about the marketing machine, as you've mentioned with Call of Duty there. It's about also making sure they put out a quality product.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a bad Ubisoft game for a number of years, if I'm completely honest. And if Ubisoft were to take over a lot of their projects, especially with Homefront 2 being developed by Crytek, the guys behind Crisis, I think there's a big great potential there. So it just begs the question, what have THQ, why did THQ let it get to this point? Do you know what I mean? Because they have to, as you say, we can only look at it from an outsider perspective. But even still, I mean, the signs have been there, knocking at THQ's door for a number of years. But it's like nobody's paid any attention to it.
Yeah.
Would it have been so bad with the affiliations? Would it have been bad if before they had filed for Chapter 11? Would it have been so bad if THQ had actually got in touch with Ubisoft and said, well, we hear you're interested in some of our IPs. Why don't we work together on them? I mean, stranger things have happened, and we've seen tie-up deals like that before. So, it wouldn't have been anything out of the ordinary, but surely that would have been a better option than going to Chapter 11 and then potentially Ubisoft buying out all their IPs to the point where THQ ceases to become a company at all.
Yeah.
But just to close off the discussion, it's worth pointing out that since they have been bought, a lot of the titles that are scheduled for next year from THQ are still on track.
Still planning.
So do keep an eye out for them. I still think South Park and the Stick of Truth is going to definitely be a game to watch during 2013. I think the work that Obsidian have done on it, I mean, Obsidian haven't been particularly great for the last couple of years, especially with games like Fallout New Vegas and numerous lawsuits and all sorts of things. It just seems that Obsidian have gone back to their RPG roots, and what better way to do it with a sense of humour in South Park. And we saw a lot of footage from the game over the VGAs in December, so I do think that's one to watch. And I think Homefront 2 really has an option to reboot that franchise again, and let's hope that Crytek can put some much needed love into that franchise. So be an interesting year to see how it all develops during 2013 for THQ and whether they can bring it back. I'm not the biggest fan of THQ, if I'm completely honest, but I think the more publishers and developers we lose from the industry, whether they create good products or bad products, is never a good thing for the industry as a whole. So it'd be nice to see THQ come back from the brink and show, with a bit of will and a bit of productive thinking and quality product, that that there is a place from within the industry.
Indeed. And we need, when you have more competition, that makes everybody better.
Yeah.
That goes back to my belief in capitalism. When you've got competition, there's nothing better than that. Because, everyone's going to strive to do the best product they can because they don't want to get knocked off. And I think, that's the danger of having someone kind of corner the market, like when we were talking about Call of Duty. You get to the Activisions of the world being so large with their title like that in the first-person shooter market that, they don't have to worry too much about, they can pretty much put out any kind of, half-assed version of the game, and they know it's successful. They've got to win, and, they can chalk it up before they've even finished it. And it almost becomes probably like a rush job where it's like, well, we don't need to tweak. We can tweak that after we release. We can put a patch out. We can do this. I think it makes for, almost a sloppier product, and they don't challenge themselves as much to differentiate, to try something new. And I think that can be dangerous. That can make it, it's almost like everyone's accepting an inferior product. And they know it, and they're okay with it, and they passively agree that they'll accept it, and that's risky to all of our gaming, and I hate to see it.
I don't know. The trophy hunter in me says, well, that's not so bad because if it doesn't sell well, the price will drop quicker, and I can rack up a few extra trophies on something I wouldn't ordinarily play. But to be honest with you, I've found a lot of good games that haven't necessarily had the marketing machine behind them. So I get what you're saying. I did make a compelling argument with someone the other day, where I pointed out, Call of Duty doesn't do beta testing, which has always puzzled me because, let's be honest, the bugs have, as you mentioned,
Well,
been there for many years,
they
and yet
actually they
it still
actually
doesn't go into beta.
they actually do beta testing, but they have paid beta testers that are actually employees, and
But it's all
it's a
behind
very
closed
limited
doors.
number compared to, some companies will put out, thousands of people will be invited into the beta, or even tens of thousands in some cases.
I think it's because Activision know that basically if they put out a beta, even if it was for 4 weeks
It
over the
leaks.
course of the summer, if they put out a public beta, they know that it would just get hammered by tens of millions of people, and tens of millions of people would be instantly put off. So that's probably why they don't do it. And in fairness, that's actually quite clever of them. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I
So
mean,
yeah,
I can appreciate trying to keep the story plot and everything like that a little secretive, but for whatever their reasons, it'd be nice to have a company that. For one, this is the thing. Back in the day when you originally got a game, there wasn't patches didn't come out. There wasn't, the game needed to be finished. If it had some major bug and the game didn't work, it wasn't released. It was
yeah,
delayed. And then you get to the point where, well, we can do patches and things. And then you get, you get to this next phase where it's like they almost don't worry about it, and you have a day one patch, and that becomes so absurd to the point where you see where things like Skyrim's DLC, they have no fix for that after the fact.
yeah.
You,
We
you,
should
you
we should probably put this on the back burner and keep that for another show. Because to be honest with you, that's something we could talk about for days, about the
I
state
just
of patching and stuff. So yeah, maybe
I
that's
just want to
something.
see these companies. I just want to see these companies, be responsible for a good product on release day. That would be, if we almost had some kind of organization or something that ensured that, a kind of a quality assurance. That would be nice. I
Well,
know it'll never happen, but
isn't that what trading standards are for? To make sure that the product is fit for purpose when it actually goes on sale. Because let's be honest, there are a few titles that have questionably not been fit for purpose upon release. So, but yeah, we'll keep that topic for another show, I think, because we
yeah,
could
that
just
doesn't
talk
even fit
about
in
that
with
for days.
PS4 discussions or anything, does it?
Yeah, yeah. So
It's a whole it's its whole own topic.
that's a show on its own. But speaking of the marketing machine, we should probably go on to the
Sony,
next thing that
yeah.
we want to cover. How terrible was the advertising over Christmas?
What advertising? I saw
Exactly.
I saw a little bit of things, Battle Royale, All-Star Battle Royale, and you
Which is a
know,
fantastic game, by the way, we might add.
that's the only. I mean, what are they completely done with? I mean, all their key person that they exposed to the world that made a mistake on the tire commercial. Are they completely? What's going on here?
Well, I mean, we mentioned one of the articles, so we were talking just before we came on air, one of the articles that I did recently, an editorial, just looking at it, and I did cover the advertising. You know, back in the day of PS1 and PS2, Sony were well known for its marketing, not just because, it did a lot of advertising, but purely because it was unique. And it got people talking, it got people excited about stuff, even, just even trying to figure out the advertisements. And it seems that Sony have, throughout the PS3 era, have been stopping and starting. You've had campaigns like the Kevin Butler one, which seems to sort of have fizzled out, even though it was getting great reception and great coverage. And you sort of look to this Christmas, and I mean, okay, fair enough. Sony probably didn't do themselves any favour by announcing, this Christmas was going to be all about the family fun friendly games. And, they have released some good titles in terms of Sports Champions 2, Wonderbook, and PlayStation All-Stars. But, it's it's not games that would appeal to, I guess, your core market, really. They're the games that appeal to casuals, but even then they still failed to really deliver a marketing presence. There wasn't any standout advertisements. I probably saw, one or two adverts here and there. And even with the PS Vita, I mean, the advertising for that has been absolutely terrible. You know, there's been barely any advertisements at all, and I don't know. I just think it's not even necessarily just a case of you know, getting Sony to market to the point of where there's commercial, you know, there's a Sony advert every time there's a set of commercials come on. It's about getting the right kind of advertising, you know. They really need to look at, you know, viral marketing campaigns, things that will get people talking about the Sony brand again. And it just seems to have dissipated since the PS1 and PS2 days. There's no marketing done where, you know, it creates a buzz on the internet or, you know, via social networks. It's just, it's missing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's confusing for the consumers because, I mean, you know, from our perspective, I mean, we always have been PlayStation fans and we're going to support them regardless of whatever. But from our perspective, looking at it, it's kind of like, well, you know, we believe in the product because we own it, but you've got to try and get that belief out there to those that don't own the product. You know, in some respects, most of Sony's marketing these days seems to be either the fans telling everybody else, you know, you should really get one of these because of this exclusive or that exclusive, or essentially just one guy that runs Sony Worldwide Studios, Yoshida-san, promoting the Vita and PS3 products on Twitter, and it shouldn't be that. It should be a huge marketing drive where it gets people excited. People that don't necessarily have any interest in PlayStation, it should be getting them excited about it because, you know, PlayStation, in all fairness, and this was another point that I made in this article, is that they need to triumphantly be shouting about the successes they've made. I mean, who knew that they were within just under 1 million units off the number of Xbox 360 sold?
Mm-hmm.
Not many people. Why? Because Sony haven't told anybody. They haven't made a big deal out of it, and it's confusing because surely that is a big deal.
I don't know. I just look back in. For me personally, it seems like they've changed slogans a bunch of times. It seems like, I mean, Kevin Butler came on the scene and even disappeared even before all this legal trouble. It seems like he was a recognized face, and it's like, what happened to him? And not even to the point where, you know, the normal person seemed like they were exposed to, you know, he's still here kind of thing. And then they had I forget the little kid's name. They're starting to bring in the little African American kid that was in there. Marcus. You know, like, what happened to Marcus, and what happened to, you know, was there something there? It was like they started something on that, and then it just, again, it disappeared.
Yeah, but with the Marcus thing, I can kind of understand it because that was advertising for the PSP, and obviously at that point, you know, Sony were, you know, building up the hype for the PS Vita, and at that point, you know, I can understand why they sort of started to withdraw the Marcus stuff. But
well, just look at Live in Your World, Play in Ours. Does anyone remember that? Yeah. And then It Only Does Everything, and then what is it? Long Live Play.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what's the slogan? You know, is it? What's the latest? You know, what's the? I mean, it's. I don't know. It seems so chopped up. It seems so broken. It seems so. You know, I think they missed the point on this. Like the Kevin Butler thing, that was a perfect opportunity. With whatever's going on with the tire commercial, they could have turned that around.
Yeah.
They should have. It should have been a big story. They should have made a big deal out of it, and then they should have made fun somehow. Like, have him do a commercial, and he's trying to sell tires, or something along those lines. You know, and they could have made, and then everyone would have been like, "That's a real funny take on it." You know what I mean?
But see, here's the thing. Even with these advertising campaigns, in the Sony of old, used to be, it used to be a case of where it wasn't even slogans. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the advertisement, the product was always the the thing that shone through. And even with the Kevin Butler adverts and the long live play and it only does everything, the product hasn't shone through. It's been more about the slogan. You know, in that respect, Sony do need to return to its roots. You can't have a product that, you know, it only does everything or only on PlayStation. Because at the end of the day, the slogans don't matter. It's about the product, and the product needs to shine through for it to be successful. And they're lacking that. They have done for numerous years. And I don't know what it is with them. I don't know whether it's because they fired a load of PR people before Christmas, or, you know, they just don't have the marketing budget anymore. I don't know, but whatever it is, they need to go back and sort of bottle and recapture that magic.
Well, I can think of like 4 or 5 slogans that, to me, what's the other one I'm trying to think of? It was like Beyond or something like that. Beyond.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
Okay, well, let me pose this question to you. If you didn't own a PlayStation now, or didn't know anything about PlayStation products that are currently available, do you think the slogan would drive you to actually purchasing one of those products?
No, and I'll tell you that...
Because I don't either.
I think that, you know, here's my thought. Like, some of the stuff I've even seen lately, it makes more sense if you've already been exposed to the PlayStation, which, to me, you know, like you see the Battle Royale, and, you know, you see the All-Star thing, you know, you might not really recognize those characters unless you've been exposed to the PlayStation. So it's not as like a, wow, you know, this looks like a cool game, because you would be like, well, who are those guys? You know, who's Nathan Drake? I've never played on a PS3.
Yeah, but see, the long-lived play adverts, in my mind, have been great, but for the wrong audience. As you say, they're great for the fans, the people that already have PlayStation. You know, I often joked about the last long-lived play advert they did, where it was titled Michael, which is obviously my name, and it talked about all the experiences from Final Fantasy, and it had all the characters in there, Nathan Drake, God of War, Metal Gear, and all that sort of stuff. And I often joked, you know, that was like Sony celebrating my purchase history with them. But looking from the outside in, as a non-PlayStation consumer, I can't see how that would be appealing. Do you know what I mean?
You'd be like, oh, well, who are these people?
Yeah, it's more of a rallying.
That's why I think, you've got to get something that you're sticking with, and if you have a Kevin Butler or somebody like that, or a Marcus, then they need to be a regular staple point. And, you know, I mean, they went with kind of a humor route, and there's no reason why they couldn't keep doing that. You know, have him showing him playing it and doing something crazy. He's supposed to be working, you know. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate in terms of showing games.
I just had an image in my head of the Kevin Butler ad where he dressed up like a Viking woman and was singing, if you remember that one.
A little bit.
Yeah, when he talked of humour and stuff. But
it was Play Beyond. That's what it was. Play Beyond. Yeah. But, I mean, you know, just the fact that I can think of, you know, 4 or 5 different slogans, it's like, what the hell is the slogan? You know, if they haven't stuck with something, they haven't, you know, was Kevin Butler, was that effective? You know, if it was, why did they ditch it? And if you know, if that whole thing with the tire business and all that other stuff wasn't, you know, if it was a big deal and they're suing him, you know, I mean,
in some respects, I'd love to see Sony go back to just creative marketing and getting people talking about the adverts and the campaigns and stuff, you know, and creating a real buzz for those that don't currently own the products. I mean, you know, it's not like Microsoft are doing any stunning advertising either.
No, but you know what they're doing regularly, at least here in the U.S., is they have footage from a game. And even if it's on PlayStation and Xbox, they'll have this, like, it flashes, like, you know, available on Xbox.
And it's not anything about Xbox. It's not anything about anything in particular. They'll just show, it'll be like a game advertisement, and it'll say available on Xbox. And I think that's even stronger than what Sony's doing, because even if it's available on both systems, it's getting people thinking about it, and they're thinking about that game, and like, well, I might, that game looks cool. They might even be splitting the advertising with whatever,
that
game.
kind of emphasises the point that I was trying to make, in terms of that while Sony is still sort of, finding their feet with advertisements and trying to find a good campaign that has a balance between, the existing fans and, attracting new consumers. In the meantime, Microsoft are doing very simple, basic advertising, but here's the thing, it's what I would class as brute force marketing, because it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't go through commercials without seeing an Xbox ad. You can't go out on the street without seeing an Xbox advertisement somewhere. So, while they're not doing anything particularly creative or anything to stand out from the crowd, they are at least doing something, which kind of brings me to my next point about Sony, which is, as we just mentioned when we started talking about the advertising, is, Sony are doing barely any advertising at all.
Mm-hmm.
And, in that respect, Microsoft have got the drop on them in the fact that while Sony aren't doing anything particularly exciting with their advertising, they're not doing hardly any advertising at all, whereas Microsoft are not doing anything exciting with their advertising, but at least they're actually advertising.
Yeah. Maybe they need to go back to that. Maybe they need to take a few of their, the Little Big Planets, Uncharted's, and, only available on PlayStation. Do you remember that the it's almost like just a little sound thing. It stands out in my head where it just goes PlayStation, has like a semi-mechanical voice.
Yeah.
That stands out in my head too. It's kind of like a little stamp, and
let's be honest, it has affected game sales as well. I mean, there's so many Sony exclusives that would benefit from just having such great marketing campaigns. But you look at games like Uncharted 3, God of War 3, bear in mind, yes, they are older titles, but they never had the advertising campaign push that it should have had. Even, the likes of Heavy Rain and the upcoming...
Well, you know what? I think...
about future exclusives like The Last of Us and Beyond Two Souls and God of War Ascension. Are they going to get the marketing pushes they deserve? Because
I think they just need to show... They just need to show some of these games being played. Just show some of the gameplay. Just... I don't think they need to go into this elaborate, funny. They just need to get back to the grassroots, at least at this point. And it seems like they're just out of the advertising game lately, in my opinion. They're doing a terrible job when they do. It doesn't hit home as understandable. Like you said, if you stop and you look at these ads from the outside in, they are completely... not representative of somebody that hasn't played is not very familiar with the PlayStation. At least to the point of understanding most of the content, you've got to say that they're aimed at their regular gamers, and those people are already buying the stuff. So it's like,
but I do have to wonder.
Show some gameplay. Show some gameplay from the new titles and the exclusives. If you show like the Little Big Planets and things like that, when that came out, and it's a Sony exclusive, and it's very original, unique gameplay, you just show the gameplay. Just show the freaking gameplay, and then say, only available on PlayStation. And
that's
boom.
Effectively what Nintendo do, and look at the impact it's had. But I do wonder, maybe the reason Sony aren't advertising is because they're probably looking at the sales numbers going, well, we haven't really done any great advertisements for all these years, and yet we still sold 70 million units. And I'm sorry, but if that's the stance that Sony really are taking on it, then someone needs to be fired and someone else with a bit more vision needs to be brought in, because yes, 70 million units is fantastic numbers. Yes, it may have caught up with its competitors in some respect, but surely Sony has always been a company that drives for excellence and being a market leader. Don't sit on your laurels and go 70 million units, it's alright, that we don't need to warrant more advertising. No, that's, pardon my French, that's bollocks. Just go back, advertise it, push those sales up, because then you will get people back to being interested again.
Well, we know they're financially hurting, so maybe this is an effect of cutting budgets. Maybe they've cut their marketing budget as a way to trim some of the fat with the money spending and tighten their belt. I mean, anything like that's possible.
Yeah, but reducing costs isn't going to help them get back into it because let's be honest, it's one thing to reduce costs. It's another thing to reduce costs in essential areas. Marketing is one avenue for them to sell the products they have. If they don't do it, they won't sell the products.
Well, I don't think their cheap version of the PlayStation's gonna work out. Remember that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've seen certainly here in the UK the new Super Slim is doing wonders for sales. So I think Sony announced something like just after Christmas or something that over 30 million units have been sold in Europe alone, and if you take into account if the current number of units sold, which I think is around about the 73 million mark, there's no official numbers on that, but if it's around about the 73 million console marks and 30 million of them sold in Europe, that means Europe accounts for almost half of all PS3 sales, and yet in Europe we see no real advertising. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I just hope through 2013 that they really buck up their ideas on that, and even as you say, they just do the basic stuff, which in some I don't think anybody would fault them if they copied Nintendo, as you say, where they just show people playing and enjoying the games that are available and showing those games off, because at least it's still getting product out there and it's still getting some people's attention.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's
and they can build upon that as well.
Yeah. Well, we are in that. At least for those in the know, we're also in that. We're approaching that. I don't even know what to call this. It's a midway point where we'll be shifting over to a different system, and you're going to start getting people that are like, well, yeah, I should just wait for that PS4.
Which we'll talk about.
Yes, I know. We're not going there. You're trying to keep on track, and I like that. But, we're also coming into that point where it's like our game developer's going to shift their focus, because it's going to happen where you're going to be afraid to buy a title, or you're going to be looking forward to a title, and it's like, well, is that going to be on PS3 or PS4? And then you got the Vita sales. Another thing, whether we like it or not, Sony is in a larger market in a lot of cases, and while they're not exactly the same company, they're branches of the company. So the other thing, they're expanding in the TV market. They're taking a lot of risks in that with the high def televisions, super ultra high def, whatever they want to call it. So there's a lot of things that are going to affect prices, advertising, a lot of stuff with their choices going forward.
I just want to cut in and say that was a nice segue into our next topic, which is obviously to do with PS Vita sales.
Well, I mean, when we're talking Sony direction, you can't just talk the PS3. You really can't. There's a lot riding on it. I don't think people are aware, but with coming inventions and stuff like that, it's clear that Ultra HD and their Ultra HD TV market is going to be a big factor in Sony's success.
But we've seen though that certain technological leaps can take years to take effect. I mean,
yeah.
Three
well, in the meantime, it can be devastating to a company, but by the time they take effect, it could be you go back to the old beta VHS debate. One was supposedly better, but it didn't catch on because it was so one-sided with a company that was trying to push it versus another that became a standard.
Yeah, but I think a lot of I think that's one thing that Sony have changed since the 70s in terms of nowadays when they sort of look at new technological leaps, they don't just do it on their own. They have a whole host of partners. I suppose it'd be different if we were talking about Sony just pushing the market forward on its own, but we're talking about other companies as well that have a vested interest in this technology. I still think it's too early to really sort of start talking about Super HD, and that's something we probably do want to save for the PS4 because I think when we sort of sit down and talk about that a bit more, I'll be interested to hear some more thoughts on that, because I do think, you know, we've got to bear in mind that, you know, PS3 is 6 years old, and it was only 4 years in before we started talking about 3D. And, you know, if Sony are fulfilling their PS3 10-year life cycle, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I don't think I'm not too concerned that if a new system does come this year, or is at least announced, that too many people are going to sort of jump ship straight away or forget about the PS3 even if they buy the new system, because I mean, you only have to look at games like God of War 2, for example, which came out not long before the PS3 launched and was a huge success on PS3. It got PS2, it got huge critical acclaim, it got the sales, and that was even, you know, a couple of months before a new console came out. So I don't think we have too much to worry about on that, but we can cover that ground a bit more with the Super HD and all that stuff when we talk about PS4 Orbis next week, which should, you know, if you're interested in what we've just been saying, then you definitely want to tune in next week for that show, I think. But I just want to talk a little bit about PS Vita sales, because it's not been the greatest year for PS Vita, let's be honest. There's no denying the device itself is a fantastic bit of kit. I mean, you know, as I said in a recent article, you know, it won the Best Handheld of the Year award. First time that Sony's ever done that in its history. The potential of the device is huge, you know, but that's speaking as somebody that owns the system. The problem is that the potential isn't realised, and it comes back partially to this advertising issue. The potential isn't realised by those that don't own the system. They can't necessarily see the point of it because Sony aren't making a song and dance about it, and it's been reflected in the sales as well. You know, I think...
Yeah, where's the ad that shows someone using one and talks about all the features? Where's that ad? Haven't seen it.
No, I haven't either. I really haven't. I haven't seen an advertise. I mean, I have seen some PSV advertisements, but nothing that's just sort of blown me away. You know, I mean, I was blown away by the initial Sony press conference when it was still titled NGP. I don't know if you remember that.
Uh-huh.
And actually having hands-on time with it, that's what sold me the device. But I think Sony aren't doing enough in respect to get it's bizarre. I know we've talked about this in the past. It's one of those things where you need to get it in people's hands to sell it. You can't just have an effective marketing campaign. You have to get it in people's hands. I wonder if Sony are doing enough to do that, because, you know, the Vita is going to be important for Sony, and not just because of the money side of things, but we talked about this before in one of the previous shows. You know, it does great things with the interconnectivity of PS3, and we're destined to see some more of that, more of those innovations over the course of 2013. But it's also no doubt going to have an impact in PS4 or Orbis's future as well. So, you know, it's not going to disappear anytime soon, and I think Sony need to alleviate some people's fears that that's going to be the case. If they really are going to stick to their guns on this, then they do need to do stuff to encourage the sales of the system, because quite frankly, if you don't own a PS Vita at the moment, then you really are missing out.
Yeah, but I think a large part of their market, you know, this is another one of those products. A large part of their market is coming from people that already own PS3s. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but I will say that, like, if you were just counting on your normal, like for me, it's again, it comes back to, you know, you have the PS Vita come out, and then a year later you're going into that gray area again where, okay, PS4, you know, you're talking about something like you don't know how it's going to work. You don't know how it's going to work with the new system coming out. I'm even concerned honestly about trophies and what they're going to do with that, and support for all those things, because you know, there'd be nothing worse than like having a PS4 and something would play on the PS3, and it could also, you get the Vita version, and then you've got 3 different playlists of trophies, and it complicates things so much.
It doesn't. Honestly, as a big
Don't you think?
I can tell you now.
Well, as a trophy geared site, it does.
Well,
and you've got a separation there again, and they had backwards compatibility in original PS3s. I don't know. I just look at it from the standpoint of you're a game developer, and you're going to make a game with Sony, and now all of a sudden you're in this whirlwind of, well, you can make the title as a PS3 title, you can make it as a PS4 title, you can make it as a Vita title, you can make it as all 3. And how things get ported over, and how just all that, you can almost tell it was meant for one system, and then it was ported over, and the other versions are terrible.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think what you'll find with Sony's investment in new IPs and so on is that you won't find PS4 games coming out and then ported onto PS3. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. Especially, again, we'll talk about this more next week in depth, but given how advanced the system is supposedly meant to be, it just wouldn't be possible. But what you will find is that you will find there will be a continued support for PS3 games for at least a year after PS4 or Orbis or whatever it's currently codenamed at the moment. Even when that launches, you will still find support for the PS3 with new games. So I don't know. I still think that, if a PS4 launches, I'll be there on day one picking a system up. But does that mean I'll stop playing my PS3 and going back through my games collection? Absolutely not. And if Orbis doesn't have backwards compatibility, I wouldn't be disappointed with that either, because the PS3 is still a powerhouse on its own, and I don't think anybody's going to get rid of their PS3s anytime soon for a new system. But as long as the new system complements the PS3, then I don't think you'll see the end of the PS3 straight away anytime soon after any new hardware launch. And I think the same could be said for the PS Vita in terms of that. I still think it will be relevant more so now with the new system on the horizon. I think it's going to become more apparent and more useful to help promote the new system, depending on what Sony's plans are to implement the interconnectivity. What I'm kind of disappointed about with Vita sales, though, is we're still only talking 4.5 million worldwide now, something like that. The potential for it to sell is there. I mean, we talked about this on a previous show. I mentioned it in my article. That Vita sold something around about 200,000 units in one day thanks to sales. So for me, that's just prime evidence that the stumbling block for a majority of people is pricing. Now, personally, having owned the system since day one, pricing was never an issue for me, because I know the hardware, the technical specs, and when you can, the way I can explain it is that if you put a PS Vita in comparison to an iPad, I can't understand why people would fathom the justifiable cost of $500 for an iPad, but not $300 for a Vita.
Yeah, you bring up a point here, though, but I'm going to say something that you probably. I don't know if you're going to disagree with this or what, but I think that the variety of games that are available now on phones and iPads are going to make that's part of the thing that's going to push the PS Vitas and stuff of the world out. What I mean by that is, there's too many people that have a cell phone. They carry it with them all the time, and it has become a handheld gaming system. Here in the U.S., you can find kids everywhere with cell phones, and the PS Vita is a cool device, but you're still as much as you can say it's a handheld and you can do kind of take it whenever. I can't picture a person there at work and they get a little break and they pull out their PS Vita versus they've got their phone right there on their hip. And they pull it up and they start playing, a Facebook game or something like that on their phone. There's still a lot more access to
the games and stuff that come on an iPad and the games that you can find on a phone and things like that. And those are more, maybe a Vita needs to have phone capabilities. Maybe that, they need to push more of like, hey, you can Skype people and do stuff like that. But
you can.
it's, yeah, I know you can. That's what I'm saying. Maybe they need to push that more, and maybe they need to conceptualize it also being something, somewhat as a phone. But I think that you're going to run into that where your average person, as portable as a PlayStation Vita is, I would look at it as like, if I'm going on a trip, you got to consciously think of that as something that you're taking with you as a gaming system. If that makes sense to you, I don't know.
Yes, it does, but I'm kind of like, well, in my response to that is, I don't really think twice about taking it with me anywhere.
Do you have a cell phone? Do you carry a cell phone with you?
Yeah.
Well, do you have games?
I have a big cell phone in the fact that it's a Samsung Galaxy Note 2 and it's almost as big as my Vita, but again, I always think Vita first before my phone.
Yeah, because you're exposed to it, but you have games on your phone, I would assume.
No.
No. Oh, I'm shocked by that, actually.
I do not. Here's the thing for you. As a gaming enthusiast, as someone that really wants to break into the industry and so on like this, I hear time and time again so many industry experts going, mobile gaming's the way forward, you'll all want to play games on your phones, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know how much of that is based on fact and how much of that is just overall hype to keep mobile phones selling.
Well, how many people have mobile phones, whereas they're just getting games for it versus you've got to go purchase a Vita? I guess that's my point. It has its place, but I'm at the same time, I wouldn't be buying the Vita. I would venture to say if I bought a Vita, if I went out right now and I went and got one, I would probably, the portability aspect of it is absolutely nothing to me. Yeah, I would probably 99.9% of the time be sitting in my house playing it and not be on the move with it because I'm either driving or I've got a few minutes and I'm going to pull up my cell phone and play something on there. I'm not going to break out the Vita and be like, oh, here's a good time to do that.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily a question of device's capabilities. I think that's more that the mentality in that you do that because you're used to doing that.
Right, and I think that's, I guess my point is I honestly believe that a majority of the world probably is in that same context. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just unique in that aspect.
No, it has the capability to change, and this is really what Sony should be focusing on. Because, you look at a cell phone, it's hard to kind of explain it, but you take a mobile phone game, and sure, they're fun, but they get repetitive, boring pretty quickly. And so you're looking for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And quite often, the quality of the games themselves are not particularly great. And here's the other thing I don't particularly like about mobile gaming is it's so easy to get screwed over straight away because you may pay anywhere from a couple of dollars to tens of dollars for a mobile game depending on how good it supposedly is, and yet within weeks there's somebody already come out with a free version with advertisements plastered all over it. And so you could get essentially then buy the game for now, for nothing, and that frustrates me. I don't want to be in a position that, if I pay money for a game, I want to know that it's solid and it's going to keep me going for a number of hours, and that I'm not going to get access to a free version within weeks. Okay, you could make the argument that PlayStation Plus could render your purchase pretty useless, but that would be a pretty weak source argument if I'm honest, but the Vita is such a fantastic device, and it's annoying that you have to point people in the direction of people that own the device to actually get a feeling for how it is. I think, and it comes back to the point that I was making before, that I think your mentality is likely to change if you have one in your hands.
Yeah.
But Sony aren't doing enough to get it in people's hands. Where are the road shows? Where are the tours? Where are the booths in game shops? Where's the representatives directing people to go and check these things out? Where is all of that? Because let's be honest, that's what it needs. It needs people to realise the potential of the device by actually getting hands-on time with it. It's not just the advertising side of things either, because you can advertise it as much as you want, but people are still going to be skeptical about it because it's going to change their gaming habits.
Yeah.
And so in order to make people comfortable with the change, you really need to get the device in their hands. And until Sony sort of take that up, they're going to have to address certain other issues. And again, I point this out in my article, is that as a Vita owner, the price is not an issue, because I know what that Vita can do. Do you see what I mean? And I know it's worth the price of entry.
Well, maybe they need to have a cell phone built into it where you can have a Bluetooth headset and make calls.
Having said that, it is as much as I can justify the cost for it, I can see the argument from the other side, which is you're asking me to change my gaming habits on the go.
Well, do you use it on the go? Do you use it on the go?
Yep, whenever I travel on bus, whether I'm sat in the college or Starbucks, and people listening into this can add testament to that. I've often messaged PSN friends while sat having a cup of coffee in Starbucks.
Okay.
So, I do use this device on the go, and I do tend to use it quite a bit at home. And I've got to be honest, it's quite a nice device to have to stick. I mean, you can say that you've seen me do this many times where I've just stuck Netflix on my PS3, and the reality is I've had Netflix going while playing on my PS Vita, and I don't see what's wrong with that combination, because the Vita does have some compelling games. And it's a nice option to have. And in your scenario, let's, because obviously we know that you have quite a number of kids, but let's just say you want to free up the PS3 for them to have them go and play it. It doesn't mean that you can't play your own games on your Vita, and it frees up your devices. Do you see what I mean? But I mean,
fair
that's
enough.
just talking about what it does now. I mean, I still see the potential of the whole AR technology within it. And I think Sony really need to address the thing with PS Vita sales. And, coming back to why I originally raised this topic here, is that 4.5 million sales is not the greatest start for the year worldwide. Let's be honest, it really isn't. But come February time, it'll be the 1 year anniversary of PS Vita. And in fairness to the Vita, a lot has changed with the device since its launch, and it's changed very quickly. The thing is, when it gets to February, they'll have the sales data, they'll have the feedback, they'll be able to gauge the markets over the course of the year, and so they need to put a plan of direction in, because they cannot go a second year where they only sell 4 million units.
Yeah, I think they need to better let people know about the.
Because there's no question that there are games coming.
Well, the whole get a game on PS3 and get the Vita copy version, all that stuff. That kind of stuff needs to be.
That needs to be encouraged. Over the next year.
Oh yeah, that needs to be out there. That needs to be in every PS3 owner's face as well. I don't know. The recent store update is absolutely horrible, but maybe there's something to be said about advertising that there and.
Well, it's all. I mean, you buy a game now that does it, and it's plastered all over the box. I mean, PlayStation All Stars is one prime example of that. Massive giant sticker on the front of it saying "Crossbar." You buy this game, you get the Vita version for free.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So, they just need to do
in the store.
More. Well, no, I mean they do actively market that on the PlayStation Store. If something has cross-buy, it will tell you straight away when you go to buy it.
Get somebody to stand there.
But they need to encourage that more with retail games. Unfortunately, there isn't a great deal in terms of retail games that are coming that will have a PS Vita version. So just for 2013, some retail games that I can think of off the top of my head is that Sly Cooper 4 will have cross-buy functionality. So, that's something that I've mentioned in a news piece before, that they really need to build upon that, because it's not just going to be important for cross-buy, it's also going to be important for cross-play features as well. So I would expect to see, whether or not Sony do it, I would expect them to see them market the hell out of cross-buy functionality as well as cross-play. So
whatever happened to, here's kind of an odd topic. I don't know if you ever remember there was consideration for what could be done with advertising inside of games. Do you ever remember that?
Yeah. You've seen most of it already if you play mobile games. That's purely what it's going to be.
Well, no. I remember a different version that was spoken of in terms of the example was a Burnout Paradise, a driving game, something along those lines, where you have billboards in the game.
Yeah.
And selling that as advertising space, and the potential that had to bring the cost down of gaming, and how you could pass that off onto the consumer where they could save money. It makes me wonder if there's not some reason why that something like that hasn't been implemented, because it seems to me almost an ingenious way to have in-game advertising without it being in your face and having it. Most of these games that we're talking about, like mobile games and things like that, they have a pop-up window that kind of blocks you from using something for a few seconds, something along those lines. And that is certainly, it can be annoying, but you wonder if there's not a way to implement that more smoothly and still have ads and have sponsors for games, and make even additions to games and things like that, DLC content and stuff like that, almost free or very cheap, by putting some of that right in the game. Be an interesting concept to see if it could work. And if you got a Coke or a Pepsi or something like that to sponsor a game where they had, banners here and there, I don't know.
I know the game that you're referring to. It's actually Wipeout HD. Where that was pretty much the first one where they advertised billboards within it. They had done in previous Wipeouts, but HD was the first one that you really saw it come to fruition, to the point where I think there was even like a 2 gig patch for it. And on that, when you load it up, it tells you quite clearly that you may see advertisements as part and parcel of it on the billboards in the background.
Cool.
But what I will say in response to what you've just said there is, remind me to bring that up next week when we talk about PS4, because I think that'll be a really interesting concept to explore a bit more when we discuss that.
Orbis.
Yes.
Okay. I'll give you that.
So do remind me next week to come back to that point, because
I'll try. You know how my memory is. You'll know how my memory is. What were we talking about?
I think it'll be interesting to come back to that, given the rumoured specs and some of the ideas of what's going to be coming with the new console. So, yeah, we'll explore that a bit more next week.
Okay. Well, regardless, I think we both agree that Sony needs to. They need to pick a direction. They need to go with it. They need to do something. Yeah, I think they need to get some gameplay out there, just some gameplay. PlayStation.
Even go back to, at least for the time being, go back to grassroots advertising and start formulating a plan to really increase theatre sales. That's something they really do need to do. We'll come back to that, the whole PSV discussion as well, a bit closer to the 1 year anniversary of it in the West. So, because it's been out in Japan for a year now. Would you believe? So, we'll come back to that, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that's what we can take from that. Speaking of 2013, we should probably just end on 2 things really. Looking at a 2-hour show this week, but yeah, Sony obviously going to have a huge presence at CES next week. And that's kind of what I really wanted to bring this up, because not a lot of people know this, but Consumer Electronics Show every January is usually the first major show from a majority of manufacturers, and it covers everything from tablets, phones, PCs, the whole range of electronics. But for Sony, it's always a big thing, not just because of for our interest, which is gaming, but it's a good chance for them to showcase, you know, what give the public some idea of what their plans are. Last year, Howard Stringer took to the stage and, you know, said that PlayStation is going to be the cornerstone of what makes Sony successful over 2012, and in some respects it kind of did, and we saw a lot more of that with the rebranding to Sony Entertainment Network, or SEN, the promotion of services like Music Unlimited and so on like that. So, you know, what I wanted to sort of ask you is, I don't know if you've seen any of the previous any of the CES shows, but do you think, what do you think Sony are going to sort of champion this year out? Because I know you like all your technical stuff like Super HD, so I'm curious to find out from you what kind of things you'd expect to hear from CES this year.
You know, I really don't know. I'm yeah. You know, I just don't know. I really don't. You know, there's you know, there's just some things that are, no, I think it's just some things are just hard to, you know, figure out a direction, and you know, I don't know. Maybe we should talk next week, you know, about that further. And there's, I don't know. I really don't know. I can't answer that.
See, I did sort of want to come back to it again next week, but just sort of wanted to finish on a bit of speculating with this, because, see, here's the thing, right? Since Howard Stringer left Sony and Kaz Hirai stepped up, PlayStation itself has always never been far from Sony's thoughts. It's built into pretty much everything they do now. We saw obviously the Super HD stuff come out last year, and we'll sort of again cover that again next week with PS4 talk. But the thing that I want to see this year from CS, and I'm hoping Sony deliver on this, is that their big thing for the last 2 years has been device convergence, where one account, in this case PlayStation Network account, is accessible over many different devices. And I really want to see Sony promise to be more active with that, because we've only really seen it through Bravia televisions and the PlayStation and the Vita, with some small access from certain brands of Sony Xperia phones. But I want to see that develop more through devices like Bloggy, live streaming, video camera, through video cameras and computers and stuff. I really want to see that device convergence come together, where if you're playing a game on your PS Vita and you want to back up your save on your PC, that you can do that wirelessly and then email that off to another device and so on. The same way if you take a picture on a Sony camera, you can wirelessly send that to your PC, your PS3 or PS Vita or whatever. And the same with video files as well. It's about time that Sony really delivered on this device convergence promise, and you know, it's one of the reasons I still stick with Sony to this day as opposed to someone like Microsoft, because I still think Sony are in that unique position where they are the only company in the world that could possibly merge all its devices.
Well, that certainly seems to be what Sony Entertainment Network was built around.
I mean, we often criticise Sony in some respects a little bit unfairly for the lack of improvements over the PlayStation Network, but you know, it's worth pointing out to some people that, you know, the PlayStation side of things, although is set to be the cornerstone of the company, it's still a small cog in a bigger wheel.
Well, that's just it. That's what makes pulling all the stuff together that much more difficult. You got to understand it from a corporate standpoint too. If you've got a cell phone division and you've got a television division, you've got a gaming division, they don't necessarily they're not all on the same page, and they're all going to be like, well, this is the technology for us to base each one on so that we can later link them all together.
But I think
You know, it's the same. It's the same with them when we have the PS4 discussion. Is the, you know, the Ultra HD TVs certainly leaves the question of, like, you know, is the PS4 going to implement that or not? Because you almost have to know that one branch is going to be successful and it's going to become popular enough to catch on. It's like 3D TVs. You can say what you want about it. You know, they're not yet in the market enough where they're common to the point where that's a standard. And so if you make it so the PS4 works on a 3D television, now you can see that would be a serious problem when a small percentage of the world owns a 3D TV. So,
like myself.
well, I mean, you know, I mean, it's great technology, and certainly everybody probably wants it, but then you've got cost factors and everything, because, you know, buying a system is one thing. Buying a system that does truly everything, like one of our, you know, staple point, it only does everything. Well, it doesn't do everything.
Yeah. Well, see, and this kind of brings me back to CES, which is kind of what I want to see this week, is that I do actually want to see, you know, PlayStation not be this small cog in the bigger wheel, but I want to actually see this bigger wheel start to encase everything more, so that we're not just talking about a small cog in a big wheel, but we're talking about the big wheel as a whole. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I'm almost thinking of, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things too. Like, if you're one of those guys that buys like all Sony products, there'd be some serious benefits there. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, I'm getting into something again where it's like, well, you might own a Samsung television, you might own a, you know, a Motorola phone, you might, I don't know. It's.
Well,
I don't know if their payoff would be as large again as you might expect by having those hopes, because you're talking about having it, you know, to truly be functional across the masses, it would need to work on all kinds of different devices, by what you're talking about.
Yeah, but see, I can back my thoughts about what we might see just purely on one brand alone, and that's the Gaikai deal that went through earlier this year.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to have huge implications in making a lot of things possible. So much so that it may even help drive sales of PlayStation if, as rumoured, Gaikai is able to produce streaming services of PS3 exclusives to any device.
Yeah.
So, you know, in that respect, you know, I'm not making sort of like, I don't know, predictions, I guess, is what you'd class them on, based on just my personal things. I can see some things that you know would help back that point up. But I also think CES is going to be a huge focus on games this year, which is quite bizarre, really. I mean, we've already heard from Crystal Dynamics that they're going to be showing off the Tomb Raider multiplayer mode next week at CES, which is very bizarre when you consider that most game companies tend to leave that for things like GDCs and stuff like that, and their respective trade shows. But for them to take it to an actual consumer electronics show and sort of show off a world's first there is a huge step for the gaming industry, I think. Which is why I think, you know, CES might not be on a lot of people's radars, but it's worth checking out next week for news from that, because I do think we'll see some huge things. And I think, you know, coming back to this talk of PS4, which we will inevitably cover next week if we don't cover most of it this week, but I do think...
I don't think we've covered most of it. I would say far from it.
But I do think if we were going to see anything, even just like, you know, teasers or anything, I think that's going to sort of come from next week as well. But I think CES would be a good way to gauge the direction they may take it, because there's no doubt we're going to see software, and we're going to hear Sony talk about device convergence, and I think that will give us a little bit more insight into the PS4, even if it's not announced there and then.
Maybe all their devices do that already. They just didn't tell us because they didn't advertise it.
Yes, and I think they'll start to give us some clues about their focus for the year, and as I say, that will certainly, if anything, more than anything, with them giving clues like that, we could probably even gauge as far as to say, well, are they actually going to announce a new piece of hardware this year? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, we put the PS4 out a couple months ago. We're going to start advertising it now.
Yeah. But
it'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
To see. I mean, if any, in case anyone's does want to check out the official Sony Electronics blog do live stream with Q&A as well. Kaz Hirai and Jack Tretton were there last year when they showcased the PS Vita there.
Well, maybe we should get on there and ask some questions.
So yeah, I'll try and find a link to include with the blog with the podcast post later on, see if I can try and track that down. And if not, I'll just update it during the course of the week to see if we can
ask some annoying questions. So what the hell happened to Marcus? No.
well, Sony UK have already put out on Twitter, what sort of questions or what sort of things you'd be excited for. Surprisingly enough, looking through some of the replies to Sony, there was a huge demand for the PS4, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But yeah, so we'll try and find out about live streams and stuff like that during the course of the week, and update the podcast post with all that kind of information, and we'll come back to the CES thing when we talk about PS4 next week.
Alrighty.
So to round off the show, New Year, I figured.
New Year.
Just a fun bit of thing to do.
2013.
To end the show with. Coming gaming resolutions. Any that you want to share?
No, I've made a choice recently to only buy, to be much more picky on my choices of gaming. My time's been limited. My gaming backlog got big. There's games that I want to buy that are been out for a very long time now that I want to get back to. And I've made it. I went to a transition as a gamer from being very trophy whorish to having, doing the 100% thing, to kind of getting that broken by games that I absolutely refuse to finish.
Bulletstorm is
I like really hard games. Believe it or not, I like the challenging trophies.
So are you saying that you may be looking to pick up Dark Souls in 2013?
Yeah, I might. I mean, I'm looking more to. I think I'm going to choose a few titles that I really like, whether that's playing demos, being very particular. There's things that I just like. I'm gonna try to enjoy games more is my resolution, instead of playing them for a certain reason, like to play Call of Duty to max prestige. I'm going to break that habit where I'm just like, I'm not going to care about the prestige getting all the way to the max. I'm not going to care about DLC trophies. I'm going to pick my games. I'm going to get the platinums in them. I'm going to play them to the full experience. I'm going to play multiplayers that I enjoy versus, things that have multiplayer that have trophies. Yeah. I'm gonna try and focus more on that, and I think I've come full circle as a gamer, because back when I played the PS2 and I played the PS3 early on when it didn't have trophies, the games like Oblivion and stuff, I played the hell out of that, Dante, man. I played that, hundreds and hundreds of hours, and played it through on, playing different characters to get another perspective of the game, and that's the kind of games I want to play. So that's going to be my focus, I think. And
well, if you want any recommendations, you know who to ask, don't you?
Well, I think too the other thing is, I want to give more PSN games a try. That's something else that I want to focus on, because I've bought a lot of PSN games in the past, but there are also games that you recognize right off. What I mean by that is I've bought a lot of like an Uno or things like that,
yeah.
Where it's like I know what the game is, versus trying some things and trying some demos. I actually went on the store before Christmas, and just I downloaded a bunch of demos. I just like, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. And I think people need to give that a look-see and give things a shot. Because
I think
too many commercialized games and stuff, you think, well, Call of Duty, and I've got so many friends that are just limited to, they just play one or two things, and that's really sad as a gamer, because you're not experiencing a lot of different things. Even if you just try a demo, it takes 5 seconds to go and click on it and let it download in the background, and then spend a few minutes and before you spend money. And you can find little gems here and there, and that's really what I want to try and focus on, is finding things that I really enjoy, versus the trophy or time-consuming grind, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
I think there'll be some interesting PSN games for you during 2013. I mean, I know we keep talking about it, and people are probably tired of me talking about it, but the Binding of Isaacs is definitely one that I think people should check out in 2013. And you're absolutely right. People do need to take a bit more of a chance with PSN games. I know people get a bit sort of, I guess, anal about the fact they can't necessarily get 100% on every game they possibly own, but I always see PSN games as those nice little fillers. The stuff to play in between other stuff that always promises to give you some kind of unique experience that you don't always find within retail games. So, yeah, fair play to you, I say. That's a great resolution.
Well, that's another thing to remember to talk about when we talk about the PS4, because, remind me of this, the ability to remove your trophy lists, like if you had just, gotten a few trophies in a game and you want to eliminate it from your PS4 trophy list, I think would be a really great feature, and we need to probably talk about that next week.
Yeah. Speculate a little bit more on that.
Speculate, exactly.
What was it? So we're talking gaming resolutions. Personally, I have quite a number of them.
Uh-oh.
Well, I don't want to drag us going too long.
We're already 2 hours.
Yeah, but no, my aim is to hit 200 platinums this year. Hopefully that's a possibility.
You need to cut down on the smoking, buddy.
I'm, 50
cigarettes?
50
packs a day?
So, no, 59 platinums off 200. Shut up about cigarettes. But yeah, I'm about 59 off, so I reckon I could probably do that this year.
Yeah,
I think
certainly.
as well that I need to definitely go back through my backlog and clear a bit more of it, especially given the year that we've got, because having compiled that list of everything in 2013 that's coming out, there's probably about 2 games that I'd be a bit skeptical about picking up, but the rest of them pretty much instant purchases for me. So
yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously I have to combat the fact that
There's
I
a
do
few
have
of
a
those.
beta that I do want to finish quite a number of games on, as well as pick up some titles like Soul Sacrifice and Warrior's Lair on that. So yeah, my gaming resolutions is just to try and finish it more often and hit that 200 platinum mark. I think that would be a huge achievement. I seem to have slowed down in recent months, and I need to get back to that a bit.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and definitely as a gaming resolution, need to finish more things on my Vita, even if it means selling my soul to the devil and finishing Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified.
Oh, I can imagine.
But yeah. But I'd be interested to hear when we put this podcast post up later on, when people read it and listen back. I'd be interested to know what their and I just want to make this particularly clear, because I know we already have a thread going on this about goals of 2013. But I'd be interested to hear what people's gaming resolutions are, just purely gaming, not personal gaming. Resolutions are for 2013.
Keep in mind, resolution. It doesn't have to be necessarily a goal. It could be something that you've vowed to play or to try or something like that. So expand upon it.
If people put theirs in, we'll address that next week. We'll read some of those out and give mentions too. I'm hoping we can get Clark's with us next week on the show to claim his podcast appearance prize for naming our show. So maybe we'll as a newbie we'll get him to read some of those out for us.
Cool.
So yeah.
Okay. Keep in mind too, there's the next gaming event poll. Yeah. Shout out to Squill. Thank you for mentioning that.
What are you crazy people? Why are you not voting for Far Cry 3? I'm actually surprised at the poll.
Guess we got to get our hands on it. Not everybody owns it,
Yeah, but I mean, surely that would encourage people to pick it up. But well, I tell you what, I am shocked looking at the poll so far is that Killzone 3's in the lead. That really does shock me.
Well, it's also a multiple guess, so you can pick more than one. I think people are picking the titles that they own, and I'm sure a lot of people own that because it's been out for so long. So, except for the people like me that take stuff back and resell it, and like old titles like that I don't have anymore.
Well, speaking of gaming polls, and this is an idea that I'd like to hear people's feedbacks within the podcast post as well, is we at the news team are currently all own, with the exception of IDP, all own PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. And it's a 4-player multiplayer game, so what I was thinking of the possibility of doing, without sort of stepping on anyone from the events team's toes, is having a battle against the news team every now and again, just to challenge us. Do you know what I mean? A sort of mini versus staff members versus community members, and hold sort of like a round robin tournament where we could keep score over the course of several months, and welcome challenges from the community as well. So keep your eyes open. We may look to do something with that within the news team. So
okay.
That'd be a pretty cool thing to do, no?
Well, yeah, I wanna have, for those of you that are aware, I've even talked to Squill about this. I want to have another competition, members versus staff. I had something kind of cool in mind for the outcome of that, but we didn't have really any games or anything like that kind of picked out. Challenges is always, people are playing different things, so we need to kind of narrow it down where we've got everyone involved. So as many people as possible involved, at least.
Yeah, but I think with this, it's just something we can do as a more, not just as a community thing, but also a team bonding thing as well. So. I'll sit down with them a bit more, discuss it in a bit more depth, and as soon as we have a bit more on it, we'll let everybody know.
Or just an overall race for platinums, whatever game you want to take up. That's another possibility.
Yeah, I'm going to put that idea across that I had, if you remember me saying about it, where it'd be interesting as a community insight to see how many trophies that one of us can earn during a podcast, but we'll talk about that a bit more and see if that's a doable thing as well. So that'd be quite interesting to do over the course of 2013, would it not?
yeah, absolutely.
Something different to offer podcast listeners to. Cool.
Well,
that pretty much rounds it up for another week, isn't it?
Yes,
Great.
indeed. Vote in the polls. Please vote in the gaming event poll and stop in and see the podcast information. Give us your New Year's resolution for the new year, and gaming related resolution. We don't want to hear about you quitting smoking or anything like that. Dante, though, you need to cut the smoking down, man. If you're lighting up every time I hear that lighter, you're a chain smoker, man.
No, I was literally just like flicking the lighter.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were lighting a cigarette every 30 seconds.
No. Just, when you get
like, dude, I'm worried about your lungs. You need an artificial lung attachment with your Vita.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've recently started using my Zippo lighter again. I recently got some flints and stuff for it, and it's just one of those things, when you have a Zippo lighter in your hand and you just have to flick it.
All right.
We should do that live on air in future.
All right, more about that next week. We'll talk about the PS4 and smoking. All right, folks, thanks for joining us for our first broadcast of the New Year. Again, apologize we went so long. We'll try to keep it shorter on future versions.
This is Kryptonite Dragon and Dante Zero. Have a nice day. Hope your new year turns out to be really great. So long till next week.